Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be going over the requirements, what you should and shouldn't do, what you need to make sure of, etc. for invoicing NDIS participants, mainly plan managed and self-managed participants. If they're NDIA managed, these requirements would be for the invoices that you might have to provide through the portal. But for reference material, if you go to keru.com.au/blog, you can find this post here. And this is going to have pretty much all the points we're covering, and we'll be referencing back to this. And then the other page, you can actually go to the NDIS directly, and they have a fairly good page here with a lot of information that is also included on here. And so let's basically get straight into it. So the reason that you need to be so accurate when you're doing your NDIS invoicing is because, one, they'll obviously get rejected if they're in some way not compliant. And every time they get rejected, the plan manager or whoever is going to come back to you and say, hey, this is wrong, blah, 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 blah. And then you've got to go and redo that invoice and send it off again. And then that's just going to delay your payment. And it also could trigger an audit of some type. If you're constantly getting these compliancy things wrong, then obviously it's more likely that you're going to get audited for your payments, and then you're going to have to provide all this supporting material to show what you're invoicing for. So from the NDIS website, we have pretty much a direct quote here, which is, providers are responsible for ensuring that claims for payment are complete, truthful, and accurate. We review claims regularly to ensure they are compliant. To show your claims are correct, you must maintain complete and accurate records of supports delivered to NDIS participants. These include invoices, evidence of support delivery such as service agreements, other documents that can validate the claim for supports provided. Providing this documentation allows us to verify the quantity, type, and duration of the support delivered if selected for a compliance review. So one of the things that's not mentioned directly here, but is pretty well included, is something like a detailed shift note. And we'll cover a bit more of that in a second. So what do we need on our NDIS invoice? So to avoid delays, you must include your business name and ABN, the participant's name, NDIS number, and address, and then the total and the GST amount. Obviously, most things are GST exclusive or GST free, but if you do have something that comes under GST, make sure to include that amount. And then each line item on the invoice needs to have the date, the support item number, the quantity, the rate, and the claim type. And I put if applicable there because it might be something like writing short notice cancellation at the end of the description or something along those lines. And then obviously make sure to check these things as well. So your invoice number needs to be unique to that client. You can't, for example, do invoice 003 or invoice 003 and then invoice next week and use invoice 003 again. You would need to obviously make sure that it's invoice 004 or some other variation. If the same invoice number gets sent over, that will undoubtedly get rejected. Make sure you've got your invoice date on there, and also make sure you've got your payment details on there, or how else are you going to get paid in most instances. So in terms of keeping supporting documentation, you need to make sure that your supporting documentation includes the participant's name, NDIS number, the date and total hours or quantity of supports, the support type, and the location of the supports. So this can be things like having a nice detailed, well-formatted shift note. A shift note will generally include all the client's details, the date, and then an area for the note. And if you do them on Keru, if we go and have a look at a shift note here, so we can go in and select our client, we've got our date, we've got our duration with the start and end time, and then we can add the particular supports with our quantities and rates, and then we can go in and write whatever shift note we want, blah, 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 and get that saved up. So that would tick a lot of the boxes here for supporting documentation. And then there are other requirements for different support types, and you can see those down here. So there's a few different examples and documentation for different types and stuff like that. So go and check that stuff out. I'll try and have a link in the description, and I'll probably put one at the bottom of this page as well. So some other document requirements that you want to make sure you cover are keeping your service agreements. And in your service agreements, have like the schedule, the cost, quantity, quality of supports, things like that. Make sure that that's all detailed as best you can. I know sometimes it's not very straightforward, but make sure that you do it as best you can. And then make sure your service agreements note down the delivery location and expected outcomes. If you've done any quotes, keep those. If you've got any other evidence or any rosters or schedules, things like that, make sure to keep all of that. Again, this is like a lot of it won't ever be used, but if you do get audited, it's very handy to have this kind of stuff, because otherwise you may end up having to pay back any of the ones that you can't substantiate. Now, I've got a little note down the bottom here. Are shift notes enough? And yes, for most basic supports, anything that's not too complex or too over the top, yes, a shift note, a well done shift note will be perfectly fine, in my opinion at least, for covering the basis that the NDIS has outlined. Obviously, for every participant, every provider is different, so make sure that you are going through these details on here and on the NDIS's site, and making sure that you are confident that you are ticking the boxes for each of your different clients, and make sure that you're keeping absolutely everything that you can and documenting things properly to ensure that if you do get audited, you don't have to pay all the money back or have any other consequences. So how do we invoice NDIS, plan manage, and self-manage? So make sure that you track your services first of all. And the easiest way to do that is with a system like we've built here with shift notes, where you can add those line items in. So when you're adding your line items here, you are getting your invoicing ready, but you're also allocating this to the shift note so that anytime I come in here, I can see what I was doing on that shift note, what services I was billing for there. Use the correct codes. So obviously, if you're billing, you want to have arranged with the participant what codes you're going to bill under for their funding, and have that based on what you are, of course, doing and the goals that you're going towards. But make sure that when you're selecting your line items, you're definitely using the right codes. So the way that we do this is through our services section, where instead of having access all the time to all of the NDIS codes, there's about 600 odd, instead you add the ones that you use in here, and you can give them a name that you understand. So if we add a service here quickly, we can go in and we've got all of our NDIS codes in here, and you can search using the support item numbers. You copy and paste or whatever you want to do. And then you can give them a name that you understand. So I like to do like ASC, for this one, high intensity, and public holiday. And then you can make sure that you put your rates in here. And we try and keep these NDIS rates updated as well, so that you've got the accurate rates here. But if you are looking at these and think they look wrong, just make sure to go back to the support catalog and double check, because if you try and charge over the rates, again, you'll get knocked back and you might get reviewed. So track your services, use the correct codes, calculate your total. So obviously make sure, even when you're doing it in a platform like this, make sure that when you're adding multiple shift notes and you get to the end, double check that that total does look correct, because even if everything sort of looks right, if you've missed one little thing, that total might be out. And then again, compliancy issues, billing issues. Now, when it's time to generate your invoice, lots of people use all different types of things. So the most basic form is you can have like a printed out template and write your own up. Or a more common example is to use something like QuickBooks or Xero to do your invoicing. And then obviously Caroo can do it as well. If you're doing your shift notes in Caroo, it's quite easy. So this shift note here, I'll delete that invoice. We'll just get this saved. And then if I want to invoice that shift note, I can do it a couple of different ways, but I'll just show you this way. I'll click the $, and it's going to bring in the client details. It's going to bring in that line item that we had, and then we can hit save, or we can hit save and send. And there we go. Our invoicing is done. Now we can obviously do that for multiple and do bulk invoicing and things as well, but doing it in a system like this does make it exceptionally easy. And then we send those off. So obviously save and send on that previous step, and then follow up. So if payments are late, which they can be, it's not usually the plan manager's fault. If you're dealing with a plan manager, it's usually either the NDIA is being held up processing it, whether that be for a whole bunch of reasons really, but you can also have things, we've had things in the past where we've issued an invoice, but it's gone through at a time when the participant's plan was getting sort of moved around. And so the payment for that invoice, and I think the next one as well, was delayed by a couple of weeks. So just bear in mind that when you are being held up getting your payments, it's probably not the plan manager's fault. It's more likely either a problem with the plan, perhaps there was a problem with your invoice, a compliancy thing, or maybe it's just that the NDIA is moving a little bit slow. But you can obviously always follow up with the plan manager and just say, hey, is there any update on this one, blah, 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 blah. And they'll, every experience we've had having to do that, they've been really good at keeping us in the loop. So tips to avoid common invoicing mistakes. Yeah, we covered that one. Always use the latest price guide. Double check the client details. So make sure that you've definitely got their NDIS number and their name and things correct. Make sure that your services and codes are done clearly. Keep all your records. And last one here, preferably use a dedicated software. So something like Caroo, some people still use like note-taking apps for their shift notes and things, and then use, say, QuickBooks for their invoicing. But just make sure that you've got some kind of system. Paper is probably the very last alternative. And then a couple of little FAQs down the bottom here. But let's go over and just quickly do an invoice from scratch. So we'll add another shift note. Add some details in here. We'll add a couple of line items. Won't bother typing a full shift note here. And we'll get that saved. And so to show you how easy it is to invoice in a new system like Caroo, I showed you that way before where we click the $, and it takes us to the invoice form, like so. But I'll show you the two other ways that you can do it. For this, I'll actually add a second shift note. Like so, we'll get that saved. And then, so say this is my week's worth of shift notes. I only did 2 shifts this week. I can just go up to the little zappy icon here, click that. It says these settings will invoice 2 shift notes. If I wanted to, I could filter by start and end date or filter by a particular client. For example, now it's only 1. Untick that. Now it's back to 2. And then click next. It's got our 2 invoices ready. And then I'm not going to hit save and send because I don't want to send anything, but just hit save. That's going to create those. And our new invoices are done and ready to go. Now, if you hit save and send, they're already emailed off as well, but in this case, I did not. So there we are. That's the all the requirements for NDIS invoicing. If there's anything I didn't cover, which I'm sure there is, let me know by either going to the contact us section on caroo.com.au, or you can reach out to us on Facebook or comment on YouTube or whatever you want to do. All right, I will see you in the next video. Thank you.